Now, a word about animals on the Mark Thompson Show.
Put it together for someone who does such great work monitoring the world of animals, monitoring how animals are discussed and issues around animals are discussed worldwide through media. Through DawnWatch, it's a robust group of people with that same interest on Facebook and on her website. How about it for Karen Dawn? Karen, Happy New Year. And
Happy New Year to you guys.
It looks to me like there is a giant problem brewing in this country and worldwide, and it's around bird flu. Can you bring us up to speed on what your research has shown and what the many variables associated with this emerging problem might involve?
What's really wild is that if you look online as to how much of an issue it is for humans, you get all sorts of varying and different information. But I, of course, track what's going on with animals. And so when I put out my year-end DawnWatch end-of-year roundup about what was going on with animals, bird flu was the number one story because we started off the beginning of last year, 2024, with it on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. And now here we are a year later, and a few days ago is on the front page of the Los Angeles Times again. During that year, we've gone from, gosh, it's a year ago, traveling through lots and lots of birds to thousands of sea mammals being washed up on the shores in South America. Seals dead, colonies absolutely being infested because it had been spread to various mammals. And towards the end of last year, we had a big cat sanctuary, pumas and all these big cats in the sanctuary in Washington State lose 20 big cats to bird flu. So this is a story that's being somewhat underreported, but it is so out there. As far as humans go, we do not have many cases yet amongst humans in the United States. The best I could find out worldwide, it looks like about 500 people have died so far. What is truly frightening is that when we do have cases of it amongst humans, I just sent this to Tony. It's funny, and there's no way he could possibly have gotten it yet. But I thought, just in case, I'm a few minutes later. But it looks like amongst humans, the mortality rate could be as high as 50%.
Wow.
Now, COVID's was something like 1 in a few hundred, and that took us to our knees. So if this mortality rate of this bird flu is really going to be as high as 50% amongst humans, COVID was like a joke as compared to what we've got coming. And we have entirely brought this upon ourselves. I mean, it started in the factory farms. And as much as, you got the Los Angeles Times saying things like, well, it seemed, we don't know how it spread, but it seems to be that wild birds migrating have dumped it on birds elsewhere. Something I dug up, and which has, again, been wildly underreported, is that, and I found this in Forbes magazine, who'd found this on the CDC website or something, but it's not being shared widely, is that we are still doing something that I first learned was a no-no during the mad cow disease outbreaks, which is we are feeding waste from some animals to other animals as food. And so waste from the bird industry, the factory farming industry, has been fed in the United States and is still being fed to cows as food. And then they're wondering, how is bird flu getting into the dairy industry? I mean, they have traced the avian flu in this bird waste that is going to cows. So how can there really be a question? Now, apparently in California, they say they've stopped feeding bird waste to currently lactating dairy cows. Okay, that's good. But these dairy cows are very often on the same farms as the beef cows. They are still feeding this avian waste too. So how can they?
Wasn't there something like that, Karen? I didn't interrupt, but I was just going to ask you. I feel like Mad Cow has some kind of aspect to that same sort of thing.
That's what I just mentioned. That's how I knew even to look this up, because you and I, we're not going to pretend we're in our 20s and we're old enough to remember mad cow disease, and that's what was happening, was that the reason that was spreading was because they realized that they were feeding one industry of animals with the waste from a different industry of animals, thinking it would be safe because the different species did not get the same disease. Now we're a little older, we're a little wiser. Science has moved on a little bit, and they realize that these diseases mutate, and that when you have two animals on the same farm being exposed to each other, you will often get the diseases jumping from one animal to another and mutating. And when they get into pigs for some reason, and pigs have been affected with this avian flu, from pigs it goes easily to humans, because there's a reason that when they try to transplant organs from other animals to humans, they use pigs, because we do have more similar physiology to them than we do to birds. So these diseases mutate. When you feed waste of one animal to another animal in a factory farm because it's cheaper, and we're talking about vegetarian animals, they're not supposed to be eating the waste.
Right, they don't. Exactly. The whole thing is so ridiculous to begin with.
They're supposed to be grazing, but that's too expensive. It's cheaper to feed them the crap of another species, because it's expensive to get rid of that crap, and you get in trouble if you dump it into the rivers. So let's just feed it to another species, and then wonder why avian flu. I almost said mad cow disease, because it's here we go again. When are we going to learn? Now, mad cow disease didn't kill all that many people, and COVID didn't kill all that many people, but avian flu is looking bad. It's looking really scary, and it is not under control. And the Los Angeles Times is at least reporting on the fact that we're not really tracking it carefully. We did let it get into the milk supply. We didn't shut down the farms where it was in the milk supply. And but we're still saying things like, gosh, we wonder how it's spreading. Meanwhile, we're doing crazy things with animals on factory farms, just crazy.
So this H5N1, the bird flu, one of the things, and you've just alluded to it, that LA Times piece, which you so smartly put into your roundup and to your newsletter, one of the things it points to is as I say, something that you just kind of alluded to, which is that we're not tracking it. There are whole parts of the Central Valley, and of course the Central Valley is the hot zone for it, potentially, because there are so many dairy farms and animals and cattle and chicken farms, et cetera, there. It's not monitoring the wastewater. There's no, they are incredibly undermanned when it comes to trying to monitor wastewater, which apparently is the greatest kind of ongoing metric that you can find for how bad the infection is among humans.
They're not monitoring it, and there's a reason for that. And it's what we've learned about the power of lobby groups. But if they were carefully monitoring what was going on with avian flu, and they were acknowledging that as of now, we've got suggestions that it could be 50% fatal when it spreads to humans. There's no way that these farms on which they found it, which is 1/10 of dairy farms in California, there's no way that they could keep operating and keep putting out milk to the public and keep having workers on the farms exposed to these dairy cows who have this disease.
So you're saying so because of that, you're saying it's deliberate. They don't want to find the numbers.
I would call it willful ignorance, because the farm lobby keeps the government going, and they would have to be shutting down these farms if they were acknowledging how out of control this is getting. And I included in my roundup a study which really shocked me, which is that when they studied the workers on these farms for antibodies, they found out that 7% of the workers on these farms had these avian flu antibodies. And these guys had been out in the community wandering around, and then they're wondering, when a girl comes down with it and she's very, very, very ill, like one of the only 2 cases so far that are acknowledged as avian flu, having actually gotten into and infected a person. This teenage girl almost died. They're wondering, how could you possibly have caught it? And then on the other hand, we have the workers on these factories out in the community wandering around with avian flu antibodies. So I'm worried, and I tend not to be an alarmist person, but I'm worried that we might be where we were with COVID back in 2019. We might be there with avian flu now, and avian flu looks like it's a lot more deadly. So we're in trouble, and it's because of the way we are treating animals. And, a DawnWatch subscriber had a letter in the LA Times, one of the few papers, where they're open to printing these letters that challenge the agricultural lobby. And it just said, if we're wondering what's going on, why is it, avian flu spreading to the dairy industry, and why is it possibly going out into the community? She just asked, we might want to ask ourselves why we are still drinking the milk of other species. And thank heavens, we've started to realize this isn't necessary, and that plant-based milks are a really big chunk of the milk market at the moment. It's, up around 30% at the moment. And Starbucks last year, one of the big stories, finally stopped upcharging for non-dairy milk. But we've got to get over this idea that we think we can't survive without dairy, when we find out that 10% of dairy farms are infected with bird flu, and this is dangerous. So we've just got to wake up. And Mark, you and I are vegan. We don't yell at people, you've got to go vegan. But on the other hand, when you've got 10% of California dairy farms infected with avian flu, do we want to think about whether the dairy industry might not be the best thing to be promoting at the moment, or whether we might want to start looking at getting our milk elsewhere? And I think it might be tough, without trying to be preachy about it, this is a little bit crazy.
I don't know where you get this, John. It says bird flu is not a deadly virus. I think it does have a mortality rate, as Karen Dawn was saying, that's fairly high. Isn't that correct?
I just sent, if Tony wants to open it up, I emailed him an article I hope got through, and it was from the CBC, and that's where it says that it is a mortality rate of about 50% when it gets into humans, about 50%. So where do we get it? Well, no, I don't get it on.
Yeah, that's from the CDC. I mean, sorry, John, but on that one, it's
it spread widely amongst humans, but when it does spread amongst humans, it's really deadly.
Before I let you go, and this has been great that we've talked about this, because I really feel as though this is an emerging issue, and as I've just mentioned, it may be the issue. I mean, from the standpoint of public health, the issue that this new administration may have to deal with. And they may try to explain it away like they did the last one. It's going to go away with the warm weather, whatever they say. But the reality is, here it is, based on available human case data to date, the case fatality rate of avian influenza, that is H5N1, is approximately 52%. So,
Tony, thank you for grabbing that when I sent it so late. But when we do have folks like John saying, I don't know where you get this.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Respiratory failure is the most common cause of death. Other complications may include multi-organ failure, pulmonary hemorrhage. Is it pneumothorax? I don't know. And a lot of bad stuff. I don't know how to pronounce a lot of the stuff that'll be happening to us if we get it.
And again, these dairy workers, 7% of them were walking around in the community with antibodies. So they are going to be bringing it out into the community. And, at the moment, it doesn't seem to be highly catchy. But we learned with COVID, these things mutate.
Sure, exactly. Milk is safe if homogenized, says Gordon. I mean, it is true that homogenization takes a lot of those dangerous pathogens out. Isn't that true, Karen Dawn?
This is true, but Gordon, I don't know if he wrote that. I don't know if he's not really listening. But the milk may or may not be safe. The dairy farms where the workers are working are not safe. Workers are catching this disease from the cows and bringing it out into the community.
He means pasteurized, yeah, but homogenized or whatever. I think that's.
Mark, I don't know if you heard my answer. It's not.
Yeah, I did. You're saying
it milk. It's the workers.
It's the workers, right? The workers are clearly being affected in big numbers. I mean,
Bringing
fairly
it out
substantial
into the
numbers.
community. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
So I mean, so let me
This young
help.
girl
I mean,
this young girl who almost died from it. They don't know how she caught it. She wasn't working on a dairy farm, so it is somehow starting to spread through the community. So even if the milk might be safe if it's pasteurized, the milk industry is not safe.
Yeah, and let me just suggest, and this is what all the articles that you read about when it comes to bird flu are suggesting, that, hey, it is in that dairy worker to somebody else, we just mentioned it, Karen Dawn just mentioned it, that you begin the first human-to-human transmission, and then you're off to the races, okay? So I get it. The milk is fine because it's pasteurized, fine. But the workers who made the milk, if you want to think of it that way, they aren't safe, and it's not just about them. It's about their ability to transmit the disease to others, and then the contagion continues from there. It's a very serious issue. The last thing I wanted to mention, there it is, current situation.
I'm smiling at your communication skills, Mark. It's like, yep, that summarizes it beautifully.
From the CDC, H5 bird flu is widespread in wild birds worldwide, is causing outbreaks in poultry and U.S. dairy cows, with several recent human cases in U.S. dairy and poultry workers. This, again, is from the CDC website. While the current public health risk is low, CDC is watching the situation carefully and working with states to monitor people with animal exposures. CDC is using its flu surveillance systems to monitor for H5 bird flu activity in people. But again, the surveillance system is not being used in the Central Valley of California. I mean, it's insane. That's a population that's wildly exposed to this. So I don't know how you can say you've periscoped up with your surveillance when an entire swath of this country that is most affected is being ignored. So,
and I just have to say again with that, it's in the wild bird community. I'm scared they're going to start killing off, wild birds and blaming them for this possibly coming pandemic. When again, how can you be blaming the wild birds when you are feeding the droppings of poultry farms to dairy farms? I mean, and then or not dairy farms, to cows on other farms who, of course, can easily transmit it to the dairy farms. I mean, how can you be blaming the wild birds? But
yeah, it is.
Nobody wants to be broadcasting that we're feeding poop to cows on farms.
Karen, thanks for the info. Looking forward to helping you grow DawnWatch this year, because it's a great resource. The work you do all the time. I'm always struck by some things that I thought I knew, and then there's additional information I didn't know, and some things that I didn't know at all. So I encourage everybody to follow Karen Dawn and DawnWatch on Facebook. There is, as I mentioned, a robust community of supporters there, and you can also find her at DawnWatch.com, and there you'll find everything more. I'm trying to find the Kim's not here today, so I have to do all this myself. Where is Karen Dawn's DawnWatch.com? Here it is. Thank you. Karen Dawn at DawnWatch.com. Just for my sense of order, I had to see it. Thanks, Karen. We hope for the best, but fear the worst on the bird flu thing, and we look forward to our next conversation and many more conversations in the year ahead. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Karen Dawn, everybody.
Join the flock. Again next time for A Word About Animals on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.